Woohoo! Good morning.
Good morning.
How's everybody?
Great.
Good. That's a perfect answer. This morning I was sitting in meditation pretty early on, and I kept hearing this noise on my screen door. And I thought, what is that noise? Must be a really big mosquito, I thought. And then it just got louder and louder. Then it was scraping on this box, and stuff started to fall over in my patio. So, of course, I had to interrupt and see what that was. It was my desert tortoise. His name is Toto, or her name. I don't know what it is, but it's Toto. He was saying, "Where's breakfast?" So I guess I am a father in that regards, That's my little something. So, happy Father's Day, and thank you for the flower, Bonnie. It's absolutely beautiful. So this month's theme is how we allow our good to flow through us. And I love that theme, and I love exploring this. So when I was developing my message last week, I was in Sedona, Arizona. Anybody been there? I was trying to tap into those vortexes, and I was developing that, and of course that was before the tragedy that happened in South Carolina. So I'm really not going to talk about that, but I am going to talk about our theme this month. But I just want to take a moment to acknowledge Reverend Bonnie's beautiful words, and thank you for that. It's hard to know how to respond to something like that. It's hard to know where the good is in something like that, whenever that kind of tragedy happens. Fortunately, the good has already been shown to us in that situation. My only response to it was that we have to have compassion. We as spiritual people, spiritual beings, can only have a sense of compassion for that entire situation, and not just compassion for the ones who were murdered tragically, but also, as Reverend Bonnie also said, for the alleged shooter, him and his family. How can somebody have that much pain and experience that much pain? So we as spiritual people bring that compassion into play, and it's really the only logical response that we can have. But what happened so beautifully, I don't know if you've been keeping up with it, but did you see how quickly the families and the loved ones of the people who were murdered, how quickly they came in with a sense of forgiveness? They said right away, we can only offer love and forgiveness. And then they talked about the beautiful people who was their family, saying that they would have also reacted the exact same way. So even in that situation, good came out of that situation. And I was just touched and really moved by how quickly that they were able to actually do that. So in that spirit, I hope that we can continue and to raise that. So there's a saying in Science of Mind, and I'm just going to ask you to say this with me or think it with me and see where you feel it in your body. And the phrase is, all the good there is belongs to me. Where do you feel that? Just do a body scan. All the good there is belongs to me. Some of you might feel it in your heart. Some of you might feel it in your solar plexus. For some of us, it may bring a sense of incredulity. How many syllables is that? And doubt. So, but when we're talking about good, and we as practitioners of religious science, well, we like to entertain that idea that all the good there is belongs to me. And not just some of the good, but all the good that there is. All the good that there is. I have this affirmation that I've been saying for many years now, and it says, divine love now flows through me and radiates from me to everything and everyone around me. I'll say it again. Divine love now flows through me and radiates from me to everything and everyone around me. And I've used this affirmation in times where I didn't feel that, but I knew that some part of me knew that, some part of me believed it. So that's part of it also, is the belief that I'll be talking about. So we are already beneficiaries of so much good that it's impossible really for us to comprehend how much good that we're receiving and experiencing at this moment. You know, about 4.5 million years ago, was anyone around them? Just say yes. Absolutely. About that time, this was a slightly different solar system. In fact, it was still kind of, it was like a free-for-all. It was kind of like the wild, wild west out there. There were planets that were, well, there weren't even planets yet for the most part, but there's like chunks of fiery rocks floating around and crashing into each other. Gravity was having a really good time. And all those chunks were gravity pulling each other towards each other. So what happened is the Earth, our home, Gaia, Turtle Island, was just beginning to form, and it was just starting to get its act together. And say, I like my shape, you know. I've been working on my figure for a little while, so I'm looking good. I'm a good sphere going on. And then all of a sudden, this big thing the size of Mars went boom and crashed into us. That was our atmosphere-less moon that we've been enjoying so much lately. Has anybody been seeing that alignment in the stars lately? Venus and Jupiter, Aldebaran. Wow, absolutely gorgeous. So this hypothesis, which is called the Theia hypothesis, states that like about 4.5 billion years ago that this giant sphere collided into us. Now, mind you, this was about 20 to 100 million years, give or take a few million, after our solar system began to coalesce. So stay with me, and I'll tell you where I'm going with all of this. Now, this body is referred to as Theia, and the reason is because that was the Greek Titan, who was a mother of Selene, the goddess of the moon, which is really kind of a cool story. When this happened, this completely changed the evolution of Earth, changed how Earth was kind of forming. And after that, it took, you know, it's just unfathomable to think how long it took for life to begin to develop on Earth. But the only way it began to develop was there was too much oxygen in the atmosphere. It went down into the water rusted. The rust released a bunch of other stuff into the atmosphere. Then all of a sudden these green little plankton-like things, I mean, we're talking a gazillion years ago here. It started to form, and then from those single cell organisms, other more complex things started to develop. In other words, life wanted to persist. Life wanted to express itself in any way that it possibly could. Now, we've only been on this planet, you know, not very long, but humans have only been around, like I said last month, we've only been around for maybe between 2.5 and 6 million. And most of the time, we haven't really been as human as we are now, some of us. So the whole point is this, is we're the perfect distance, and I mean the perfect distance from the sun. If we were any closer, we'd all be a lot hotter than we are today, you know. We'd be sweating, we'd just melt, actually. If we were any further, we'd freeze. We would freeze, and life couldn't exist as we know it. So far as we know, we're the only planet in this particular galaxy that has life on it. So when you say nothing good ever happens to you, I'm just saying, you know, we can argue with that. So Ernest Holmes said in The Science of Mind, he said, there is a power for good in the universe. It is available to us. It flows through us. It knows us, and it waits for recognition of it by us. It is closer than our own breath, closer than our own neck vein, as the Talmud said. This power for good responds to us. And especially, it responds to us when we understand that it is the only power there is. It's not some of the power, like I said. It's all the power that there is. But when I was in Sedona, I realized how much easier it is for people to believe in the power of crystals and vortices. I think that's the plural. Everywhere I went, people were handing me rocks. Don't you feel it? I was like, you know, no. Yeah. And I would try to close my eyes and just hold it. And that's because I believe in the power back of it. I believe in a power greater than myself, a power greater than any of the rocks and any of the vortices. I do say it's beautiful there. As you know, if you've been to Sedona, absolutely beautiful. And I was in this chapel They have this beautiful chapel there. I forgot the name of it. Anybody know that chapel? It's built into the rocks. I was up there. What's it called? No, that's in Scottsdale, I think. But that's a beautiful place. So it's this chapel. This woman said God wanted her to build a chapel up in the Sedona rocks. And the Sedona people said, no way. So she happened to be a good, close personal friend of Barry Goldwater. So needless to say, she got her chapel, and he got reelected. But at least it's tasteful, and it's built into the rocks, and it's maintained by this Catholic church. I just happen to know one of the people who's in there, and he said, I want you to come and play in this chapel. So, and it's absolutely beautiful, and you look out there and you see Cathedral Rock, and you see all the beautiful valley that makes up the Sedona area. And that beauty, you just can't help but be moved by that beauty. So I'm up there playing. You know, I ask to be inspired whenever I play, and I'm there playing my flute. And when I open up my eyes, there's a woman sitting next to me. She has her phone and she's recording me, which is fine. I'm used to that. But it's a good thing I did my hair good that day. But that's what's important. So she follows me down to the bookstore, to the gift shop, and she says, in a typical Sedona way, she says, may I approach your space, or something like that. I forgot how she put it. I thought, what? Is she talking to me? So I said, yeah, of course. What? And she said, well, I just want you to know that I asked for a sign today from my mother, who has long since passed. And she said, you just happened to play her favorite song. And it turns out she's working with this whole spiritual community there. And it was absolutely beautiful. It was just one of those moments that you realize that, that we are connected in ways that we really don't quite understand. Much like gravity. The enlightened teacher, Jesus, he said, it is done unto you as you believe. It is done unto you as you believe. Ernest Holmes talks a lot about that, and he spent quite a bit of time giving, lectures about that. And I really like that, and so I'm going to focus just a little bit on that, because I think there couldn't be a better description of how this good works, of how it manifests, and we experience it in our own lives. So let's look at that for a little bit. It is done unto you as you believe. It is done unto you by whom? By what? Well, we choose for the most part to believe it's a power greater than we are. What kind of power is it? Well, it's probably a spiritual power that is back of everything, as Ernest Holmes also said. So it's done unto you, okay? It's happening through you. It is happening to you. As you believe, that's a key word, as you believe. In other words, it's a choice. It's a constant choice, as you believe. Now, the most important word in our thing is believe. What is a belief? Anybody? Just toss it out. What?
A habit that you do all the time.
Okay.
And think all the time.
Practice thought. That's exactly right. Gold star eating. Oh, you're wearing a gold shirt. Never mind. So she knew it already. Okay, so a belief is practice thought. It's practice thought. It's what we practice every day. We're already experiencing this saying here, this idea that it is done unto us as we believe, because it's happening to us, it's happening through us at every given moment. I'd like to think that belief is the seed that we plant into the soil of our understanding. Belief is the seed that we plant into the soil of our understanding. Much like a farmer, when they plant the seed, I don't know if it's an act of faith more than it's an understanding of how it works. And we understand how it works, how good works. We can also be that farmer. We're already harvesting what we've reaped, in the sense of our thoughts that we've been thinking up until now is exactly what we're experiencing. That's why when I ask you to see where you feel, when it says all the good there is belongs to me, that's probably a good indication of what you're experiencing now. So when you plant that seed, that belief, there's a mechanical process that's acted on it by something else. Some people like to call it the Great Mystery. That's what many Native American tribes call it, the Great Mystery. But belief is so important in this and so strong that, when the Spaniards came over, my ancestors, the Mayan people, they couldn't actually see the ships. They couldn't see the ships. But the shaman went out there, and he's noticing that the waves were breaking in such a way as to indicate there was something out there in the water. And he went there every day, and he would be doing, certain ceremonies and things to try to understand what was out there, because there wasn't a belief that that could exist. There wasn't an understanding that a vessel that size could exist. And by the time that he finally started to see them, and he was telling everybody, hey, there's a bunch of big old things out there. And it looks like there's people, they were on their little ships, on the little boats coming in. And of course that changed a lot of history, didn't it? But my point is that belief, or that not understanding, did not allow them to see that. And in our own lives, is that also happening? Albert Schweitzer said, nothing that is done for you is a matter of course. Everything originates in the will for good, which is directed at you. Train yourself never to put off the word or action for the expression of gratitude. And of course, that's the really biggest part of experiencing our good. And that's the part that I'm focusing on for the rest of this morning. Gratitude. Is there any better way to experience gratitude than by appreciating what we already have and to just increase that? Skip was telling me how grateful he was that he took a shower this morning. And I was expressing how grateful we were that he took a shower. He said he's been having water trouble all week, so he was fighting. And so let me tell you, I'm grateful every time I turn on the water, just that there's running water. We don't know how electricity works, but of course, that's also something to be very grateful. So how do we use this power? How do we use our understanding of good? Just let me use an example. Say that you're trying to sell your home. At some level, you have decided that you want to manifest a different dwelling for you. Of course, as we all know, we want to manifest things because we want things because we think we'll feel better in the having of it. So say you want to sell your home, and you hire a cool realtor, and then all of a sudden people tell you, oh, no, it's the worst time to do it. The economy's terrible. You shouldn't sell your house now. Summer's the worst time. Fall's the worst time. Winter's the worst time. Spring is the worst time to do it. If you let those anchors of doubt seep into you, they'll eventually crust like barnacles. And I think too often people who don't understand the way that the law of good works may want to do that to us. So you listen to these doubts and these naysayers, but you know that you have access to the power. You have access to all the good that there possibly is. So how do you use it? Well, you simply step back and you just affirm that, yes, indeed, that the power for good is working at this moment through you, in you. You affirm that you're one with all the good that there is and ever will be. There's no lack or in spirit. Spirit does not impose limitations or timelines. Therefore, there's no law to support this belief. So in other words, you must change your consciousness. And the reason is because everything happens in consciousness. Everything happens here. This is where it's all happening. And science has shown us over and over again that when we see things, they're not through our eyes, but they're happening there in our brain. When we hear things, they're happening in our brain. Smell things, they're happening in our brain also. Just ask people who've lost their limbs and they still itch and they still feel them. Well, it's up in the brain here. But doesn't it stand to reason that if consciousness didn't create something, that your consciousness can change that? So that's what you do. You simply reaffirm that you are connected, that there's a conspiracy, as I like to say, a conspiracy of good at work every single moment within your life. And you say, I have access to this good. I'm part of this good. I'm already experiencing all of this good. And you change your thoughts. As you know, Ernest Holmes always said, change your thoughts, change your life, right? And you affirm that you're the direct beneficiary of abundant good and plenty. and you sense and you mentally see what we call right action in your life and in all of your affairs. In other words, you put your whole trust in the law of good. You know, have you come across those kind of people that just love to point out how terrible the world is? You know, they're either, every time you talk to them, they're saying, did you see this? You know, it's like they're affirming constantly how bad the world is. Or on Facebook, you know, they'll post everything terrible just to say, see, aren't we horrible? Aren't we terrible? Well, I like that unfollow button. I don't know if any of you have seen that unfollow button. I think that's just the perfect example of what I'm talking about here. When what we're talking about, you're unfollowing their belief system. You know, you're not tapping into their barnacleness, to make up a word. It's all right. I'm a songwriter. We make up words all the time. But we all know those kind of people who like to do that. And of course, I'm not saying that we're immune to the problems that they highlight. We're not immune to the problems of the world. But as the great teacher, Jesus said, "And if the blind lead the blind, both shall fall into the ditch." So I really like that. And really, can't we only offer a hand up to somebody if we're already standing? So in other words, we can choose to be down in the muck and the mire of the thoughts of limitation, lack, and limits, or we can stand up and say, let me help you up. Faith is to believe what you do not see. The reward of this faith is to see what you believe. That's what Saint Augustine said. When I play in hospice, a good example of this, or just an example of what I'm trying to say. When I play in hospice, I'm not focusing on that condition of the person, of the patient. So I'm not saying you're going to be all right. I'm sure things are going to get better. You never say that in hospice anyway, right? Because that's part of the situation. So when I'm in hospice playing, what I try to do instead is create as much presence and as much peace and as much belief in the continuation of good that I possibly can. And what I've noticed is that tends to uplift. And I hope that's a clear enough example. Joe Dispenza, in his book, Change Your Thinking, Change Your Life, the science of changing your mind, he talks about the 4 pillars of spontaneous healing. He studied people all around the world who had spontaneous healing. And what he found out, there were 4 things they all had in common. And what they were, the first one was that they all believed there was a power greater than they were. The second thing, they believed that they could access this power and use it to heal themselves. Third thing they believed, which was pretty interesting, was that they all believed that their long-term thinking is what put them into any kind of certain situations. In other words, they accepted the responsibility for where they were in their life. And the fourth thing that they all had in common is that when they found that when they were recreating their lives, when they were spending time in meditation or prayer, that they lost track of space and time. And I thought that was really neat. Do you believe in gravity? You're sitting there, so yeah. We often take for granted the very things that most deserve our gratitude, which is what the writer Cynthia Ozick says. And what she's talking about is the smallest things, like gravity, like breathing, like the fact that our heart is pumping as much blood as it's pumping. I think it pumps like 5.6 liters, I think, every single minute. You know, that's a lot of blood. We don't have to believe in those things in order to be the recipient and the experiencer of those things. You know, Abraham Hicks, I love the way she's always talking about, she's always saying, be glad that all the good is not coming at one time. Otherwise, it'd be a big buffet, and you'd have to eat it all, right? You know, all at once, or it'd spoil. I was in Sedona, and I was the guest of some people, gracious, wonderful hosts, and she was going to cook us some New York strip steaks. And so she plops down, big old steak there, and she said, now that's half, you know. when you finish it, you're going to get the other half. And I said, well, that'll be sometime next week, because that was a lot of food. And I was just extremely grateful about that food. But once I was done, I went ahead and I said, okay, I'll make a valiant effort. So, of course, I was the last one at the table, and they want dessert, so they're looking at me like, would you hurry up, But I was, I don't know, I kind of felt a responsibility to really try to experience as much good. I don't ever eat that much steak at one time, hardly, so, and it was awfully delicious, so didn't know when the next one would come along. I'm always saying that every second, 10 million cells are created to replace the ones that just died that last second. That's just my way of saying there's so much to be grateful for, so much good. We're the beneficiaries and recipients of more good than we can possibly know. And so by highlighting any one of those at any given time, it's just such a great reminder to how to experience even more good. And I'm going to end with just 6 ways to cultivate that sense of gratitude. And these are just really easy ways that we can start doing now. The first one is to keep a gratitude journal. Does anyone here keep that, a gratitude journal? Awesome, 2 of you. That's a great, I also keep a gratitude journal. I keep a gratitude journal, and every time something good happens, I mean, even the smallest thing, I write down, and I say things like, I'm so happy and grateful now that. Like a hot shower, I keep track of those little joys that happen in your life. The second thing to do is to use the right words, words like love and peace and thankful, I'm grateful, I appreciate, I love, those little things. Remember the gratitude that you've already experienced, and remember any time that you've had anything to be grateful for. Write thank you letters. Write thank you letters to the people who influenced you in some way. Write a thank you letter to a teacher, to anyone who's done anything kind for you. Hang with the winners. You know what that means, right? Hang with the people who use thank you a lot. Hang out with the people who say thank you, who say, isn't this great? Isn't this good? It's wonderful that. The more you do that, the more you're going to raise that vibrational to experience even more good. The other part of that is to give back, because that's the beauty of giving. We get to experience that over and over again. So those are the 6 ways that we can keep track of it all. So do you believe that all the good there is belongs to you? Convinced yet? Just say yes. As Meister Eckhart said, if the only prayer we ever said was thank you, that would be enough. And so it is. Thank you.